Welcome, age of vintage society. June Allyson played the perfect wife of James Stewart, Van Johnson and other movie heroes. Unlike her contemporary Dutch-American actress Betty Grable, who was revered as a pin-up girl and sex symbol in her younger years, June Allyson was just a consummate movie actress with enormous staying powers. During her long acting career, she had been involved in over 100 performances. Why June Allyson never saw a cent from her $2.5 million. Make sure to watch the video until the end and leave your thoughts in the comments. If you are new here, join our wonderful community by subscribing to the Age of Vintage channel. Small big screen star June Allyson. Los Angeles American GIs in World War II would pin up photos of Rita Hayworth and Betty Grable, but June Allyson was the girl they wanted to come home to. June Allyson, who with her petite 5-foot 1-inch frame proved that size doesn't matter in Hollywood. American leading lady whose sweet smile and sunny disposition made her the prototypical girl next door of American movies of the 1940s. Allyson's real life belied the sunshiny image she presented in films of the 40s and 50s. June Allyson was born to Clara and Robert Geisman in New York City on October 17, 1917. At birth her name was Ella Geisman. Allyson later changed it to her professional name, June Allyson. Her father's family name was Van Geisman, which was simplified to Geisman before June was born. During her childhood, June's parents separated and the father left the family. As a result, Allyson was brought up by her mother and the family was forced to live in poverty. Allyson was living with her maternal grandparents. To make ends meet, her mother worked as a telephone operator and restaurant cashier, and when she had enough funds, she would occasionally reunite with her daughter, but more often Allyson was farmed out to her grandparents or other relatives. After a childhood accident which nearly left her crippled, Allyson took up dancing and swimming for therapy. At the age of 8, Allyson was riding a bicycle and suffered severe injury when she was crushed by a tree limb. She spent the next 4 years in casts and a back brace. After the accident and the extensive therapy, we were desperate, Allyson wrote in her autobiography. Sometimes Mother would not eat dinner, and I'd ask her why. She would say she wasn't hungry, but later I realized there was only enough food for one. She enjoyed the dancing and became an avid fan of Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers. She viewed one of their musicals 18 times and taught herself how to dance, and practiced interminably. This intensive exercise not only allowed her to recover completely from her accident, but also made her an accomplished dancer. Despite her doctor's pessimism, she stubbornly regained her ability to walk, and, enthralled by Hollywood musicals, her awkward gait eventually faded to a slight limp and finally disappeared. By her own account, June was an eager innocent whose life was largely shaped by luck, not all of it good. As a penniless hopeful in New York, she had taught herself dancing by watching Fred Astaire in The Gay Divorcee 18 times, but was so klutzy she lost several chorus jobs. Yet the first Broadway show in which she had a featured role, 1941's Best Foot Forward, was a smash. More good fortune came when Powell saw the musical and decided she was the cutest little thing anybody ever saw. After landing in LA with just $21, she struggled to get started in movies and was about to give up when her friend Lucille Ball told her firmly, "You're going to stay." Sure enough, she scored in her first big film, 1944's Two Girls and a Sailor. Powell, with whom she worked in another movie, told her, "You're going to be a star." Allyson appeared in a number of chorus lines for Broadway productions, though she later admitted she had little talent for the genre. She continued her career on stage through the early 1940s. In the New York Times, Eugene Harmetz quoted Allyson as saying, "I couldn't dance and Lord knows I couldn't sing, but I got by somehow." Signing a deal with MGM to become a contract player, Allyson primarily appeared in their musicals in the girlfriend role in the 1940s. These films made her a popular star, especially with American soldiers serving in World War II. Allyson had become such a good dancer that she tried out at several auditions. She was hired as a chorus line professional dancer for the Broadway musical Sing Out the News in 1938. Her next professional appearance was in 1941 musical Best Foot Forward. She was subsequently picked to be in the film version of Best Foot Forward in 1941, and so made her film debut. Allyson subsequently played in several other musicals, including Two Sisters from Boston in 1946 and Good News in 1947. She next played straight roles in The Three Musketeers in 1948, Little Women in 1949 and The Glenn Miller Story in 1953. During the 50s, Allyson became one of the top box office attractions in the country. During that time period, she was voted the #1 female box office attraction in the country for 6 years in a row. In 1955, Allyson was the #1 box office attraction in the country for both the male and female categories. The wonderful, adorable, talented and ever vivacious June Allyson is one of our absolute favourite stars. She's in a delectable group of similar stars, Doris Day, Bob Hope, Jerry Lewis, Eve Arden, who bring us more joy and happiness that we could ever describe, yet don't often break into our top 3 of favourite actors or actresses. Why? I suppose there are several reasons. For one, with a few notable exceptions, their roles weren't usually the type of roles that brought critical acclaim or award nominations. They understood their role in Hollywood as well as they did their roles. They were there to bring happiness to moviegoers. The fact that they did so with such passion makes them among our favourite kinds of stars. By the 1950s, Allyson left musicals and girlfriend roles behind and began to appear as the perfect wife in a number of films. One of her first wife roles came in 1949's The Stratton Story opposite James Stewart, who played an amputee baseball player. She played the wife of another baseball player depicted by Stewart in 1955's Strategic Air Command. Allyson also appeared in 2 more films with Johnson, 1951's Too Young to Kiss and 1953's Remains to be Seen. In addition, she played a widow in 1953's The Glenn Miller Story, one of her best-known roles, and a pilot's wife in 1955's The McConnell Story. While Allyson was a star, she grew weary of playing idealised women. However, her attempt to break out of the typecast resulted in box office failure. In 1955's The Strike, Allyson played a severe, cruel woman who drives her husband, played by Jose Ferreira, to a nervous breakdown. Allyson's acting chops in the role were highly regarded, but the ticket-buying public was not impressed. Allyson's public image and, to a great degree, life were controlled by MGM until she left the studio in the 1950s. Allyson married the famous movie star Dick Powell in 1945. Powell, the crooner who turned serious actor and then producer, director and television tycoon. Their boss, MGM studio head Louis B. Mayer, tried to talk them out of it, but relented when the fatherless Allyson batted her eyes and asked him to give her away. The couple co-starred in a few forgettable films, and he directed her in You Can't Run Away From It, an amusing remake of It Happened One Night, with Allyson in Claudette Colbert's role and Jack Lemmon as Clark Gable. Powell also produced Allyson's 1959-61 anthology TV series. The marriage seemed like one of Hollywood's happiest, but it wasn't. He was 13 years her senior. It was quite uncommon for a couple to marry with such a gap in age in those days, but quite common at the present time. They had 2 children, Pamela A. Powell, an adopted child, and Richard Powell Jr. June Allyson and Dick Powell remained married until Dick Powell's death in 1963. Her ideal marriage to actor-director Dick Powell was beset with frustrations. They separated 10 months later and she sued for divorce, charging that he hit her and abused her in front of the children and passed bad checks for gambling debts. She began earning big money after leaving MGM, but it had little meaning to me because I never saw the money, and I didn't even ask Richard how much it was. It went into a common pot with Richard's money. Though June earned some $2.5 million, she never saw a cent, or cared to. Powell, who Allyson says had a fear of growing old and not being responsible for himself, managed their incomes by himself, never consulting June even about the 4 houses they bought, one now used as Robert Wagner's mansion in Heart to Heart. Richard took care of everything, says June. She never wrote a cheque. I thought offices and things like that did it. The Powells pulled around with Bogey and Bacall, Edgar and Frances Bergen. June rescued Candice when she fell into a pool at the age of 4, and Ronald Reagan and Jane Wyman, who once cracked to June, "Don't ask Ronnie what time it is, because he'll tell you how a watch is made." After Powell's cancer death in 1963, she battled breakdowns, alcoholism, and a disastrous second marriage. Allyson quickly remarried and almost as quickly divorced. In a scandal that threatened to end Allyson's career, her mother sued for custody of her children, alleging that she was an unfit mother. She dropped out of movie making, and mother and daughter settled their lawsuit when Allyson's new boyfriend was named as the children's co-guardian. The boyfriend was Dirk Summers, later a writer for Emergency and director of the ecological documentary Survival of Spaceship Earth. They lived together for 14 years until 1975, but never married. During the early 70s, she was briefly married to Glenn Maxwell. She credited her recovery to Ashrow, her third husband, a children's dentist who became a nutrition expert. The couple toured the country in the late 70s, early 80s in the stage play My Daughter, Your Son. Allyson returned to acting with limited success in the early 1970s and continued guest starring on TV through the mid-1980s. June Allyson in her later years made many appearances on popular television shows such as The Today Show, Good Morning America, The Merv Griffin Show, and many others. In 1985, Allyson received the Cannes Festival Distinguished Service Award. As a personal friend of President and Mrs. Reagan, she was invited to many White House dinners. In 1988, President Reagan appointed Allyson to the Federal Council of Aging, and in 1996, Allyson became the first recipient of the Harvey Award, presented by the James M. Stewart Foundation in recognition of her contributions to the world of entertainment. For the past 20 years, Allyson represented the Kimberly-Clark Corporation in commercials for Depends and championed the importance of research in urological and gynecological diseases in seniors. In 1984, she became spokesperson for Depends adult diapers. She died Saturday at her home in Ojai, California, after a long illness, her daughter Pamela Allyson Powell has confirmed. The singer, actress and dancer, who compiled a list of movie, Broadway and television credits that far outweighed her diminutive stature, was 88. If you liked this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you are new here, and if you want to support my work, please visit my Patreon page. Now it is your turn. What do you think about the life and legacy of June Allyson? Was she the girl next door for you too, or more the perfect wife character?